The Valiant Gallery slept during the day and awoke at night, but not for people like Nora Ellis. While patrons sipped champagne and studied canvases worth more than her apartment building, she arrived after midnight armed not with a camera or catalog, but with gloves, a mop, and a bucket of silence. Nora pushed her cart down the marble hallway wheels, squeaking softly under the weight of cleaning supplies and museum rules. She had learned long ago that in this place invisibility was power. The less she was seen, the longer she kept the job. And she needed this job. Not for herself, but for her younger sister Mia, whose medical bills came like clockwork. Rent came second. Groceries, if anything, was left. She moved carefully through the east wing, the one lined with sculptures that looked like they were either falling apart or about to be born. She liked this wing best, not because it was beautiful, but because it was empty of surveillance. The cameras never worked here. She could pause, breathe. Sometimes she even whispered hello to the pieces. Tonight she stood in front of a mixed media piece called Reverence, a tower of tattered fabric and glass meant to reflect the fragility of status. Most guests walked by it confused. Nora never did. She had studied it once in an art history class before life got in the way. Before she dropped out. Before she traded brushes for bleach. She reached for the microfiber cloth and gently wiped the smudges from the plexiglass base. Her movements were practiced gentle. She didn't need supervision. She respected the art more than most curators did. Nora moved next to the frame of a Renaissance painting, Saint in Firelight. Its golden edge was slightly tilted, the light hitting the canvas awkwardly, creating glare where there should be warmth. She frowned. They always missed this. She reached up and, standing on tiptoes, gently nudged the frame back into place. It clicked softly into alignment, the painting settling into its intended glow. She stepped back to admire the difference. The entire piece transformed, from sterile to soulful. A whisper of life returned to the canvas. She didn't hear the footsteps until they stopped behind her. "You touched $1 million painting." Nora froze. A man's voice. Calm, low, controlled. It didn't need to be loud to be commanding. She turned slowly. Leon Valente stood there in his tailored midnight suit, his tie loosened just enough to suggest a long day, or perhaps a long life. His face was sculpted not by vanity, but by routine discipline. He didn't blink. He looked at her like she had no business being there, and she didn't. "I wasn't touching the painting," she said evenly, "just correcting the angle, without permission. It was crooked." "And your—" "Night sanitation," she said. "Nora Ellis." He stared at her name tag, then at the painting, then back at her. "You're not trained in restoration. I'm trained in noticing when something meant to bring light looks wrong in its own frame." He didn't respond right away, only looked at the painting again. His eyes narrowed just slightly, then relaxed. He saw it too. The change. "You do this often?" he asked. "Only when no one else does." Leon was quiet, still, as if measuring something heavier than her words. Then he nodded once, almost imperceptibly. "Carry on, Miss Ellis." He turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows as silently as he had arrived. Nora exhaled. The silence returned. But it felt different this time. For years she had been invisible in this place, and for the first time someone had looked. Not at her badge, not at her broom, but at her. She wasn't sure what had just happened, but something had shifted, slightly, quietly, like the frame of a painting finally realigned. The next night, Nora arrived at the gallery 15 minutes earlier than usual. She told herself it was to beat the elevator delays, or to prep her supply cart better. But the truth lingered beneath those excuses like dust on velvet. She was curious. Curious if he'd be there again. Curious if he even remembered her name. The building was as pristine and quiet as always, but now she noticed things she hadn't before: security guards shifting when she passed cameras that moved a little too precisely, a whisper of change in the air. She reached the west wing just as the lights dimmed into their programmed evening cycle. The exhibit this week was a blend of minimalism and digital installation curated by someone who used more theory than emotion. Nora never liked it much. It was cold clinical, the kind of art that begged to be admired but not felt. She rolled her cart past a long mirrored installation, checked her list, and knelt to start polishing the metal base of a floor sculpture. As she worked, she noticed a pair of leather shoes standing across from her. Polished. Italian. Out of place in the gallery after hours. She stood slowly, wiping her hands on her gloves. Leon Valent. He wasn't in a suit this time. Just a dark shirt, sleeves rolled, collar open. Still impeccable, still controlled, but slightly undone. He said nothing for a moment. Just looked around as if taking in the emptiness differently than before. This piece, he said, nodding to the mirrored column. People photograph it more than any other. It reflects them, but they never see what's behind them. Nora followed his gaze. Behind the piece was a blank wall, slightly scuffed, the wear of years. No lighting, no texture. A void. Maybe that's what makes it real, she replied. The reflection means nothing if it doesn't show the cost behind it. Leon turned toward her. He wasn't smiling, but something in his face shifted, an openness, brief but visible. You see more than most curators do, he said. I'm not allowed to talk to guests, she said, half as a reminder, half as protection. I'm not a guest, he said. I'm the one who gave that rule. She raised an eyebrow. And now you're breaking it. Maybe I'm reassessing it. She didn't respond. She didn't trust him, not yet. But she was listening. Leon took a step closer, not invasive, but enough to lower his voice. Why do you do it? He asked. This job, this silence. You clearly don't belong in the shadows. Nora looked past him at the mirrored wall. I'm not here to belong. I'm here to survive. He said nothing, but he didn't look away. She gathered her cloth again, prepared to kneel back down, but he stopped her with a question. What would you do if you weren't cleaning this floor? Nora met his eyes. I'd paint, she said simply. But the world doesn't buy dreams with unpaid hospital bills. That froze him. Then he nodded once slowly, as if tucking her answer away. Good night, Miss Ellis. She watched him leave, footsteps light but lingering. And when he was gone, she turned back to the mirrored art and saw her own reflection. Tired eyes, hair pulled back, a speck of dust on her cheek. But behind her in the silver pane was something else. A man in a dark shirt watching her, not with pity, but with something else. Recognition. By the end of the week, Nora stopped pretending she wasn't expecting him. She told herself it didn't matter that Leon Valent showing up during her shift was just coincidence. But deep down, she knew better. He didn't need to be at the gallery that late, and certainly not without staff. Yet each night there he was, sometimes walking past, sometimes stopping to speak, and always watching with that unreadable intensity. The other employees didn't notice. Security gave him wide clearance, and Nora kept to her duties, never lingering too long in conversation. But something unspoken was building between them. Not flirtation. Not yet. Something sharper. Something slower. Like flint striking flint in the dark. On Thursday, he found her in the gallery's private conservatory. A narrow glass-walled space filled with sculptures that weren't part of the public rotation. It was where the museum hid its misfits, pieces too strange, too damaged, or too raw for display. Nora liked this room most of all. She was polishing the base of a statue when she sensed him enter. She didn't turn. I thought this space was restricted, he said. She stood and faced him. Only during public hours. He looked around the room, eyes pausing on a sculpture of a woman with her face half erased. This one always made people uncomfortable, he murmured. Because it tells the truth, Nora said. We all erase parts of ourselves to survive places like this. Leon studied her then. Really studied her. You don't talk like a cleaner. She met his gaze. And you don't act like a man who forgot how to feel. He blinked. The silence between them stretched heavy and private. Leon finally walked closer to the sculpture. "This was my wife's favorite piece," he said. Nora's breath caught. "I didn't know you were married." "I was," he said softly. "She passed away 5 years ago." Nora didn't offer condolences. She simply stood still, letting the truth settle. She said this piece reminded her of herself. He continued, "Always trying to disappear in parts so people wouldn't see the whole of her." "Maybe she didn't want to be seen," Nora said. "Or maybe she didn't think she deserved to be." They fell into silence again. When he spoke next, his voice was quieter. "You said once that you clean because no one else does. But that can't be the only reason." She hesitated. Then, without thinking, she said, "Because cleaning gives me control. When nothing else in life is fixed, I can wipe something away. And it's better, even if just for a moment." Leon's jaw tightened slightly. He understood that. "I used to paint," he said. "I stopped the day she died." "I used to paint too," she whispered. He turned to her. "Why did you stop?" She swallowed. "Because I had to choose between pigment and prescriptions." His eyes didn't leave hers. Then he nodded once. "I've been curating silence for years," he said. "You make me question that." Nora didn't move. "Then you're welcome." Leon looked at her a long time, and when he finally turned to leave, he didn't say goodnight. He just looked back once, as if memorizing the image of her standing beside a broken statue in a room full of forgotten art. And for the first time, Nora wondered if she wasn't just being noticed. She was being seen. The next few nights blurred into a rhythm: polish, scrub, rearrange, observe. But now the gallery didn't feel like a place she passed through. It felt like a place watching her back. Employees still ignored her during the day. Her badge still read night staff. But Nora could feel the shift, subtle, like a note out of tune in a symphony. Something was echoing differently in the halls. She wasn't sure if it was in her or in him. She didn't see Leon for 2 nights. And oddly, she missed him. Not for what he said, but for what he didn't. He never complimented, never praised, but he listened. And that in her world was rare enough to miss. It was the 3rd night when he returned. She was in the lighting corridor replacing bulbs above the lower exhibit rooms, an area often overlooked by curators. The gallery's famous marble statues looked dim in the shadows, their expressions lost in uneven light. She climbed the ladder slowly, balancing the bulb box on one hip. Halfway up, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "You're risking your neck for lighting." She smiled without turning. "I'm risking the integrity of your gallery." Leon laughed low, real. She felt it in her chest before she heard it in her ears. She finished adjusting the final fixture, climbed down, and stepped back to admire the change. The statues looked different now. Alive, noble, honest. Leon joined her side, hands in his pockets. "You have an eye for what matters," he said. "I have a life that taught me where people stop looking." They stood together in silence. Then he asked, "Why are you still here, Nora?" She raised an eyebrow. "You mean tonight, I mean? In this job? In this building? In this world that pretends people like you don't belong in it?" Her answer came without hesitation. "Because leaving would mean they're right." He looked at her, really looked. "And what if they try to push you out? I've been pushed before. But no one ever tried to see if I could stand back up." Leon said nothing, but his eyes said everything. Then with a sudden shift in tone, he asked, "Would you ever consider something different?" She crossed her arms. "Define different." "Working with the curation team," he said. "Advising. Quietly. Informally." Her chest tightened. "That's not allowed," she said. "I own the gallery. I decide what's allowed." She paused. "Why me?" "Because when I talk to you, I remember why I built this place. And why I forgot." The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard. "I don't want to be a token," she said. "You won't be. I want your mind, not your story." For a moment she believed him, and that terrified her more than the offer itself. Because the moment someone sees your value, you have something to lose. She shook her head. Let me keep cleaning. Let me stay invisible a little longer. He didn't argue, just nodded slowly. But before he walked away, he said, You won't be invisible much longer, Nora. And this time she didn't want to be. By the following Monday, the whispers began. It started as side glances in the service hallway. Then it reached the maintenance lounge where Nora overheard two staff members mumbling behind their coffee mugs. She's spending time with him, one said. At night, the other added, eyes narrowing. The tone wasn't admiration, it was suspicion. Nora didn't respond. She continued folding her gloves, her hands steady, her heartbeat not. That evening, when she entered the conservatory to begin her shift, her badge wouldn't scan. Red light, access denied. She tried again. Nothing. The silence in her chest turned into a quiet alarm. Before she could call maintenance, a security guard appeared. Unfamiliar face, clipboard in hand. Miss Ellis, he said. You've been reassigned to lower-level maintenance tonight. 3rd subfloor. That's not on my rotation. Per management request. She knew, without asking. It wasn't Leon. It was someone else. Someone watching. Someone pulling strings in the shadows. Violet Crowley, Director of Operations. The gallery's iron spine. The one who enforced unspoken rules with sharp smiles and sealed doors. Nora took the elevator down, without protest. The 3rd subfloor smelled of cold metal and aging concrete. No artwork here, just loading docks, crates, supply storage. She spent the night sweeping cement and hauling bins, alone, unseen, back to where she started. The next night it happened again. By the 3rd night her hours were cut. No one gave an explanation. Leon didn't appear, and that hurt more than the isolation. She told herself she didn't care, that she'd never expected anything from him, but part of her had hoped that he would notice, that he would ask. But silence answered louder than words. By Friday, Nora was cleaning the parking access stairwell when she heard footsteps echoing downward. She didn't look up, until his voice filled the space behind her. I heard you've been reassigned. She kept sweeping. Took you long enough. I didn't authorize it. Doesn't matter. Yes, it does. She paused, turning to face him. His face was drawn, eyes darker than usual. They think I'm distracted, he said, that I've lost focus. And have you? He didn't answer. Nora leaned on the handle of her broom. You didn't speak up, she said. When they moved me, when they cut my hours, when they erased my access, you let me disappear. I was protecting yourself, she finished, not me. Silence fell like dust in the narrow stairwell. He stepped closer, his voice low. I didn't know how to defend someone without turning them into a target. You don't defend me, she said quietly. You stand beside me. Or you don't stand at all. Leon looked at her like he'd just seen her for the first time again. I never meant to, I know, she said. And somehow that made it worse. She turned to leave, but he reached for her hand, just to brush fingertips on fingertips. I see you, Nora. She pulled back gently. Then stop letting them make me invisible. She descended the stairs without another word. And Leon, for the first time in years, didn't return to his penthouse. He walked the empty corridors of his gallery alone, hearing her voice echo in the places silence used to live. Saturday night arrived like a bruise. Nora stood at the street corner across from the Valent Gallery, holding her tote bag close. She hadn't clocked in. She wasn't scheduled. She had no access. But her feet brought her here anyway, like they missed the place before her mind admitted it. The gallery windows glowed with the soft light of a private event. Through the glass, silhouettes floated in designer suits and gowns. Glasses clinked, laughter echoed. She was back where she always belonged, on the outside looking in. She turned to leave. Then her phone vibrated. A single text. Come upstairs. No name. But she didn't need one. She hesitated, then crossed the street. The security guard at the door, usually indifferent, stepped aside immediately. "Mr. Vallant's request," he said. The elevator was already waiting, doors open, as if her arrival had been timed. When she stepped out on the main floor, the event noise was muffled. The central gallery was empty, cleared for a new installation, but in the middle stood Leon, alone. No guests, no champagne, just a spotlight illuminating a pedestal, and resting on the pedestal was a single framed sketch. Nora stepped closer. It was a charcoal portrait, unfinished, raw, emotional. It was her, not in uniform, not cleaning, just her face, focused, strong, a smudge on her cheek, a loose strand of hair, her truth. She looked at Leon. His hands were at his sides. No suit jacket, no armor. "I stopped drawing the day my wife died," he said. "I told myself it was because I didn't have anything left to say. But that wasn't true." He walked around the pedestal slowly. "I stopped because I couldn't stand to see anything real." Nora looked back at the sketch. "It's not finished." "No," he said. "Because I'm not finished seeing you." She met his eyes. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I made a mistake. I thought I could listen without standing beside you. I thought I could care without it becoming a liability. I was wrong." He stepped closer. "I don't want to erase what you made me feel, even if the board doesn't approve. Even if the whispers get louder, even if you walk away." Her voice was low. "And what exactly do you feel?" He didn't flinch. "Respect, gratitude, and something I'm still learning to name." Nora searched his face, unsure if it was safe to believe him. "You don't owe me anything." "I know," he said, "but I owe myself the chance to do this right." She looked at the drawing again. It wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect. But it was honest. She reached out gently, ran her fingers along the edge of the frame. "People will talk," she said. "They already are. They'll say I used you. They'll be wrong. They'll call me an opportunist. And I'll call you the reason I remembered how to feel." Silence stretched between them, but this time it felt like breath, not distance. He extended a hand, not demanding, just offering. "Come back. Not because I'm asking, but because you want to." She didn't take his hand, but she didn't walk away either. Instead, she said, "You'll need to tell them, all of them, the truth." "I will, and not just about me, about you, about what you forgot." Leon nodded. "Starting Monday." She turned, walked toward the exit, then paused at the door. "You're learning," she said. He smiled faintly. "You're teaching." Then she left, and for the first time he didn't feel abandoned. He felt chosen. On Monday morning, Nora returned, not through the service entrance, but the front doors. No badge beep, no cart to push. Just her in a plain dark coat, hair pulled back, eyes steady. She walked past polished floors, stunned receptionists, and a row of interns who had only ever seen her in a uniform. She carried nothing but a folded piece of paper. A letter of reinstatement signed by Leon himself. On the 12th floor, where the department heads kept their quiet kingdoms behind glass doors, every head turned when the elevator opened. Nora stepped into the hallway like she had every right to be there, because this time she did. At the end of the corridor stood Violet Crowley. She wore her usual perfection high heels, pressed silk blouse, lipstick so sharp it could cut. But today her smile faltered for half a second. "Nora," she said, voice clipped. "We weren't informed you'd be returning." Nora held up the letter. "You were informed. You just chose not to read it." Violet's lips tightened. "You're making quite a stir," she said. "The staff is confused. Rumors are flying. Then maybe clarity is overdue." Before Violet could reply, Leon appeared behind her, walking calmly down the hallway. He wore no tie today, no pretense, just quiet presence. "Everything all right here?" he asked. "We're fine," Nora answered, eyes still on Violet. Violet stepped back with a sharp breath. "Of course." Leon nodded toward the east wing. "The redesign meeting starts in 5 minutes." Nora nodded once, then walked past Violet without another word. Inside the boardroom, the energy was different. Fewer raised eyebrows, more curiosity. She sat at the long glass table this time, not at the end, but beside the director of curation. No one said a word, but they noticed. The chair had been reserved for her. Leon opened the meeting without notes. "We are restructuring," he said. "Not just exhibits. Culture, visibility, purpose." He gestured toward Nora. "Miss Ellis has been invited to provide experiential insight on accessibility and user experience, effective immediately." A murmur ran through the room. One woman, a gallery archivist, smiled faintly and nodded. Nora didn't offer a speech. She didn't need one. Her presence was the message. After the meeting, she returned to the service floor, not to work, but to walk. She found the janitorial staff gathered for shift change, eyes wide when they saw her. One woman whispered, "They said you were promoted." Nora shook her head. "I wasn't promoted. I was seen." She paused. "And you will be too. Soon." Later that afternoon, Leon found her in the rooftop garden, a space she'd once suggested during a conversation about mental health and burnout. He had quietly made it happen. She stood among the potted olive trees and flowering vines, looking out over the city. "You didn't say much in the meeting," he said. "I didn't have to." He stepped closer. "They're listening." "For now," she said. "You don't trust it yet." "I don't trust change until it survives resistance." He nodded. "It's coming." "I know," she said. "But I'm ready this time." Leon looked at her hands and pockets, eyes softer. "You belong here?" She turned to face him. "No. I belong wherever people remember what matters. If this place keeps doing that, I'll stay." He nodded again, quietly. Then without pretense, he said, "I missed you." "I know," she replied. And somehow it was enough. The gallery changed, but slowly, and not without friction. Nora's presence at meetings became routine, but not welcomed by all. Some directors nodded politely. Others stayed silent. A few ignored her altogether, hoping she'd fade back into the shadows where they thought she belonged. But she didn't fade. She offered feedback on exhibit flow, lighting angles, signage accessibility. She pointed out overlooked details, how elderly patrons struggled with the floor plan, how children stared longer at unlabeled work. She didn't suggest change for the sake of disruption. She suggested it because she noticed what others didn't. Leon always listened. He didn't interrupt, didn't translate her words into something more palatable. He let her speak in her voice, not the gallery's. But with visibility came danger. One afternoon, a memo was leaked to the press. It included internal notes from a staff meeting selectively edited to suggest Nora had criticized the gallery's past donors and partners. The story spread quickly. Former janitor destabilizes elite art institution from within. Nora found out from a text message. She stormed into Leon's office without knocking. "You knew this could happen," she said, slamming the printed article onto his desk. "Yes," he said calmly. "And you didn't stop it. I didn't cause it either. That's not the point." He stood slowly. "Then tell me what is. That people still see me as an intruder. They see you as a threat. And you, what do you see?" He stepped around the desk. "I see someone strong enough to face the backlash most of them wouldn't survive." She exhaled the fight, leaving her shoulders, but not her eyes. "I didn't come here to be a symbol. I didn't ask you to be. But that's what it's becoming. And I'm the one taking the hits." "I know." She looked away. "I need to step back," she said. "Not forever, just long enough to breathe." He hesitated. "If that's what you need." "It is." She walked to the door, then stopped. "I believed you when you said I was seen." "You are. Then don't let them erase me when I'm not looking." "I won't." She left. And the gallery felt colder that night. Days passed. She didn't come in, didn't answer calls. Leon respected the distance, but he felt it everywhere, in empty chairs and quiet meetings, in the space between his voice and what used to echo back. Then on a Thursday evening, as the staff filed out, he found a small envelope on his desk. No return address, no signature, just a single line inside. "You can't paint a future while protecting the past." He read it twice, then again. The next morning he walked into the weekly board meeting, set down the memo that had been leaked, and calmly stated, "This was orchestrated." The room froze. "I've launched a review," he continued, "and I'm not interested in denials. I'm interested in accountability." Someone scoffed. "All this for one woman?" "No," Leon said. "All this because the cost of silence has become greater than the risk of change." No one replied. He ended the meeting early. That night he sent one message to Nora. No questions, no pressure, just 6 words. "We're still listening. When you're ready." Nora didn't respond to Leon's message right away. She read it, reread it, then tucked her phone into a drawer and let the silence sit. It wasn't avoidance, it was preparation. Because if she returned, it wouldn't be to survive. It would be to confront. On Monday morning she stood once more before the glass doors of the Valent Gallery. No badge, no title, just presence. This time no one stopped her. She made her way to the rooftop garden, where a small group of junior staff had begun holding quiet check-ins, an idea Nora had once whispered in passing. Now it lived without her. That meant something. She sat in the circle, listened. And when a young woman nervously mentioned being talked over in team meetings, Nora simply said, "Then speak again, louder, until they hear you." That afternoon, she walked through the service hallway where the custodial team was loading bins. They stared when they saw her. "You're back?" one asked. "I never really left," she said. "I just needed a moment." They nodded. It was enough. Then she made her way to Leon's office. The door was ajar. He looked up as she entered but didn't rise, just watched her cross the room and sit across from him, like she had always belonged there. "I'm not here to apologize," she said. "I'm not asking you to. I'm here because I have something to finish." He nodded. And because she added, "I want you to understand what comes next." "Tell me." She leaned forward. "There are still people trying to bury this change. Quietly, carefully. The saboteurs don't yell, they delay. Postpone. Edit the truth until it's polite enough to swallow." He sighed. "I know. And you're letting it happen." His brow tensed. "You're still hesitating," she said. "You think if you move slowly enough they'll adjust. But they won't. They're waiting for you to flinch." Leon stood now, pacing once. "I've already lost allies," he said. "Then lose more," she said. "If they're threatened by someone like me, they never stood with you to begin with." Silence. Then she added, "You said I taught you how to feel. That's not enough. You have to act." Leon turned to her. "You think I'm afraid. I think you're used to controlling the narrative, and I'm asking you to relinquish it." He stepped closer. "What happens if I do? You give people permission to speak without apology." He studied her, the way her eyes didn't flinch, the way her shoulders no longer held weight for others. And quietly he said, "You were never just cleaning floors." "I never was," she agreed. Later that week, an announcement went out across departments, a restructuring of leadership committees, opening participation to support staff across all levels. It wasn't just symbolic. Nora had made sure of that. She helped draft the new proposal with real pathways to influence, not performative roles, but power redistributed. Some department heads quit. Others grumbled, but a few, just enough, embraced it. Leon watched it unfold, not from behind glass, but beside her. When someone challenged the plan in the next meeting, he didn't speak first. Nora did. And when she finished, he looked at her not as the CEO of the Valent Gallery, but as a man who was finally standing where he was meant to be, next to the person who made him see the world he tried so long to erase. The Valent Gallery looked different now. Not on the surface. The walls still gleamed. The marble still shone, but underneath something had shifted. Meetings included voices that had never entered the boardroom. Art installations now credited lighting designers and maintenance staff beside curators. Even the silence of the halls felt warmer, less like a demand, more like a choice. Nora walked those halls differently too. She no longer wore the uniform, but she hadn't replaced it with a suit or a badge of authority. She wore what she wanted. She spoke when needed, and when she listened, people stopped pretending. On a Friday evening, she found Leon on the rooftop garden, seated near the edge where the city skyline melted into dusk. "You asked me once," he said, not looking up, "what I was afraid of." Nora sat beside him. "And I thought it was losing control," he said. "But it was losing connection, the kind that doesn't depend on fear or performance." She said nothing, just waited. "I built this place to prove I mattered," he admitted. "But it took someone who never asked for permission to remind me that mattering isn't something you declare. It's something you earn." He turned to her. "And I don't want to earn it through silence anymore." Nora nodded slowly. "Then don't." They sat for a while, the sky turning violet around them. Then he asked softer, "What about us?" She glanced at him, half smiling. "Is there an us? I don't know. But I want to find out. Even if I leave." His voice didn't waver, especially then. "If you leave because your work is done here, I won't stop you. But I'll follow where I can. Not to keep you, but to support you." She looked down at her hands, then back at him. "I've been thinking about what's next," she said. "About taking this model, this change, and helping other institutions do the same." He nodded. "You'd be brilliant at it. But it means stepping away." "I know." He reached for her hand. "I won't ask you to stay," he said. "I'll ask you to come back, as often as you need. This place will carry your imprint, whether you're here or not." Tears prickled behind her eyes, but she blinked them away. "There's one more thing," she said. She handed him a sketchbook, the one she used in private, the one she never let anyone see. He opened it slowly, reverently. Dozens of pages, observations, concepts, notes on light and movement, drawings of people he never noticed. Security guards, janitors, docents mid-sentence, interns laughing in stairwells. "This is what you miss," she said, "when you build things too far from the ground." He held the book like something sacred. "I'll protect this," he said. "Don't," she whispered. "Share it. Let them see themselves." That night she didn't stay. She walked out of the gallery with no fanfare, no farewell, just clarity. Weeks passed. Nora began consulting quietly for other organizations, not in offices but in break rooms, on loading docks, in the spaces no one thought needed attention. And then one morning Leon received a package. No return label, just a small card inside. Still listening, still changing, still not finished. He smiled. In the weeks that followed, the Valent Gallery opened a new exhibit, Voices in the Margin, a tribute not to the celebrated but to the essential. It featured photos of staff journal entries from support teams, even an interactive piece inspired by Nora's rooftop garden. Visitors came in droves, and on the opening night, just as the last guest filtered out, Leon stood alone before the exhibit's central piece, a mirror installation etched with words. "You don't have to be loud to be heard. You just have to speak." Behind him, a soft voice said, "Nice framing." He turned. Nora stood there. Same steady eyes. Same quiet power. "You came back," he said. "I said I would." He took a step forward, hesitated, but she didn't. She closed the distance, took his hand. No speeches, no promises, just two people who had stopped erasing parts of themselves, and in doing so helped the world around them see clearly again.